Well, there are three main religions that started off in India. So we're going to go through all three of these main ones. We've talked about them in class, but I want to make sure you have the information down for sure. The first one is Hinduism. Now, Hinduism was developed by the Aryans, that group that came in and kind of overtook that Indus River Valley civilization. And it started off as worshiping nature. Hinduism actually there are about 30,000 different gods within the Hinduism faith. They have three main ones, but 30,000 total at least. Those are just the ones that they've counted. There's more uncounted ones. But the main texts that they use are the Upanishads. And in that book, it kind of talks about how every soul is part of what's called the Brahman. And the Brahman is kind of like this harmony, this whole spirit that encapsulates the entire world. Now, those three top gods that I mentioned earlier, you have Brahma, who's the creator god, Vishnu, who's like a protector warrior god that fights for the people who follow Hinduism, and then Shiva. And Shiva is the destroyer god, kind of similar to the Greek Hades. So that one that's always against Brahma and Vishnu. Hinduism has three main beliefs. There's a lot more, but the three that I really want you to focus on are reincarnation. They believe that when you die, your soul comes back into another living being. And what being it comes back in is based off of your karma. And karma is if you are really good, if you did everything well, you were a good Hindu while you were here on earth, you would be reincarnated into a different level of the caste system. So if you were an untouchable and you lived a very good life and you were a good, devoted Hindu, you might be reincarnated up into the commoners. However, if you were not so good, your karma would not come back well, so you would be reincarnated at a lower caste level, with the goal of reaching that top caste level of Brahman. And you would do that by doing what's called your dharma, and your dharma is like your duty. Do the duties that are required of you, what is expected of you, things like that. Now, coming out of Hinduism is Buddhism, formed out of Hinduism by a man named Siddhartha Gautama, who is later known as Buddha, but he was originally a Hindu, and he was seeking spiritual peace. So what he did, he went out on a walk one day, all over India, not just a short little jaunt down the street, but he went on a walk to see how other people were living their lives. He was a very rich, wealthy man from a very wealthy family, but was very unhappy. And through that, he encountered this enlightenment that allowed him to understand spiritual peace. So he, again, traveled all over India and taught people his discoveries. And people began to follow his teachings, which ended up being Buddhism. Now, because of his enlightenment, he changed his name to Buddha. And the goal of Buddhism is to reach what's called nirvana, which is freedom from worldly desires. It's freedom from want. You're free from wanting money, free from wanting food, free from wanting success, things like that. And that's the whole goal. And to reach nirvana, you do it by following the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, number one, is that life is full of suffering. We're always going to have suffering. That suffering, number two, comes from desires. It comes from the things that we want here on the earth. Number three, to end suffering, you need to end your wanting. You need to end desires for success, desires for money, desire for relationships, any type of desire. And the way to stop your wanting is to follow the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is just a list of 8 things that help you stop your desires and become enlightened and eventually reach nirvana. Now, the last one, which also came out of Buddhism, is Jainism. And Jainism was founded by a man similar to Buddha, but Mahavira. And he, similar to the Buddha, gave up everything. And when he gave up everything, in his mind, he had conquered his want. He had conquered his desire. So he changed his name to Jina, which means conqueror. So his teachings are very similar to Buddha. Now, Jainism is very, very focused on non-violence towards every living thing. That includes people, that includes animals, even plants, and even insects. Very against any type of killing at all. If you've ever heard of Gandhi, he's a follower of this religion. So those are the top three different religions in India that developed during these early stages of India and during these early dynasties. Still very prevalent in India today and China. We even have them here in America and other countries as well. So make sure you have these down. Make sure you've got some notes down in your chart for all three of these. And also, if you want to add next to these, this is optional, but if you want to add next to these, add Christianity on your chart. That way you can kind of compare Christianity, the religion you're much more familiar with these other three that are very, very new.